Today's gospel story feels like a Hollywood movie story. One bride for 7 brothers. The riddle that the Sadducees use in this story, it's exaggerated and it is humorous, but it is their way of setting the question for Jesus about afterlife things and how Jesus would respond. The Sadducees were the people who did not believe in the resurrection. They had no hope in things beyond the earthly existence. And on the other side, you have Jesus, who is the resurrection and life beyond the earthly existence, and that brings hope in someone's life. Although there are still 7 weeks before this calendar year ends, the church year will come to an end in a couple of weeks before we begin the season of Advent. So the ordinary time season will come to an end in a couple of weeks. And as we move forward to those 2 weeks, we are invited to reflect on the end times. In theological terms, we call it eschatology, the life after death. And so today we are reminded that earthly life is not the end of our existence, but a movement towards the beginning of a new life, a movement driven by hope for us. Talking about hope, I don't know if you have heard this, there is going to be an election this Tuesday. And how exciting is that? Exciting is the last word we would use to describe this political situation. I hear many people say that today's political climate is so chaotic and so discouraging that with the scandals and with corruption, it hardly feels like there is hope. And if you listen to that responsorial psalm that we heard, our cantor sang, it seems to capture that feeling, that frustration. It says, "Hear, O Lord, attend to my outcry. I call upon you, for you will answer me. Incline your ear to me, hear my word." That's the feeling most of the people feel. Frustration. And we all can identify with the psalmist, with his feelings. Hopeless situation. But if you want to hear a story about hope, even in the midst of ruins, chaos, destruction, here is one. A few days ago, this story made the news. It's a story about the persistence of hope and the triumph of faith. It happened in northern Iraq, in one of the oldest cradles of Christianity, the town of Bartella, outside Mosul. 2 weeks ago, Iraqi soldiers liberated this town, Bartella, from ISIS. As the soldiers moved through the town and realized it had been abandoned, they did something amazing, something inspiring. something full of hope, something, a triumph of faith. They saw a church half in ruins. The first thing they did was they broke a long pole into two and tied it together to create a cross. Then they climbed to the top of the church's dome and planted their cross on the dome. And standing there, the soldiers blessed themselves with the sign of the cross, and they prayed. Then they rang the bells of the church. First time people heard those bells in 2 years. Then the soldiers, they made their way into the church. They were so grateful to be there. So they kissed the wall of the church and everything they could touch. Then they looked around and surveyed the ruins, the destruction, all the statues decapitated, pews overturned, the hymnals burned, the paintings destroyed. And they wept, looking at the ruins, looking at the destruction. Then they did something beautiful, which only the soldiers do usually. They knelt down in the midst of those ruins and they prayed. They prayed in Aramaic language, the language of Jesus. They said a Hail Mary. It's a beautiful act. In the midst of chaos, destruction, doom, hopelessness, it's these kind of stories that give us hope, that fill us with hope. Through their beautiful act, they filled that whole town with hope. And they shared that hope with the rest of the world. Today, as we hear this story, hearing that story makes us filled with hope. As our country goes to the election this week, let us pray to Our Lady, the patroness of our nation, to walk with us, to intercede for us, and to fill us with hope. Mary became the mother and gave birth to hope to the whole world. So we ask her today to give birth to hope in our own hearts, in our nation, in the world. And don't neglect to vote, because God can bring something good even out of ruins, out of chaos, out of destruction.